All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Gents Talk. We're very excited about this one. We've been trying to get this special guest for some time. Hard to nail down when you're such a busy person.
It's been a wild time the past few weeks, but yeah,
I
happy
bet.
to be here.
Justin
It's an
Wu
honor.
joins
Justin
us.
Wu.
Thank you.
Thank
Justin
you very
Wu
much.
joins us in the studio here at Startwell, beautiful Toronto. Quick shout out to our sponsors, BULOVA, for making this happen. But Justin, you were born and now you're here, and a lot has happened in between. What's
That's
going
right.
on? What's going on in your life right now?
Right now, I am fortunate to be in a position where I think I'm living the dream. When I was born and raised in Toronto, one of the aspirations was to get into film and television. It was very important to me because, telling a bit about my story, I had identity issues growing up. My parents were immigrants from China who immigrated to Hong Kong and then had to seek a better opportunity, and they eventually moved to Toronto, to Canada. And while I was growing up, my parents didn't have the best education, and they really tried to encourage me to learn about their culture, learn about their values. And I was sort of the product of, the Eastern values being taught at home, while at the same time getting a lot of the Western values that are taught at school. So I really had a hard time finding my place in society, and film and television certainly helped me by shedding light on a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different points of view, and I think that certainly helped me find my place in society and the world, and because of how not only cathartic, therapeutic, and educational it was, I decided very early on that that was where I wanted to go. But it was certainly an impossibility at the time, growing up in rural Scarborough, mostly a lot of farmland around, that how can this one Asian boy even make it in Hollywood? And so it was always in the back burner. I was never really thinking about it too deeply or too hard. But my journey has led me here. Somehow I made it through a lot of hard work, determination, passion, and luck, and people who supported me along the way. So
It's amazing. So when you were growing up, obviously for immigrant families, this line of work is not typically the thing that they go, yes, let's do this, we're all in. Did you find initially that there was some pushback when you said, you know what, the traditional careers are not for me?
absolutely. Actually, my story is kind of amusing and a bit twisted in a way. When I knew I wanted to pursue the arts, I knew already in high school. I had a pretty difficult childhood. I think being an introvert at the time, I feel like I've become an extrovert over time, that I found art was a powerful way for me to express myself, and I couldn't do so verbally, at least to my parents or to my friends and family who just didn't understand why I had this split mentality of wanting to become an artist. So I kind of suppressed that for many years of my life. And when I pursued university, it was actually thanks to a floor mate of mine. His name's Gabe Kokis, when I was at Queen's University, who was an art major, and he really introduced to me the meaning of art and different ways of expressing oneself, and kind of the liberation that one can achieve by sheer art of creation. And while I was able to go through that process and learn from him, I knew at that point I wanted to pursue it, but I had to do it behind my parents' back. So at the time I was studying biology, following my father's footsteps of eventually becoming a doctor. And so the story goes, even though I was already in pre-med, I was in second year, third year, applying to the MCATs and, being the A student, I had to call it quits at some point. I was already applying to med school, and I was so fearful of actually getting in. That was actually the weird thing, because the moment you do get in, it's really hard for you to tell your parents, no, I think this is the time for me to back out. And art was always in the background, was brewing, but I never knew how it'd be possible. So I needed to buy myself more time. And at my last year of biology, already ready to apply for med school, I tore up the application in front of my parents, and I had to make an extreme pivot. I had secretly applied to business school, to Western, to the Richard Ivey School of Business. And fortunately, I put all my eggs in one basket. I was hoping, banking that this would work, and it fortunately did. I made a plea to the dean. I was like, oh, just imagine what kind of student you'd get, what kind of alumni you'd get, because I promise you, I will be very unusual. I'd be an unusual graduate who will pursue the arts, but I need some support through entrepreneurship and business acumen. So I was able to graduate from Queen's, told my parents I got accepted into business school, and I bought myself more time. So I finished at Queen's, moved to University of Western Ontario, and that's when I did, all the feasibility studies. And that's what business school teaches you, how it's possible for you to achieve certain things. And sure enough, my parents were correct. Photography or the arts is practically impossible. When you look at the market at the time, when you look at the lack of inclusion and opportunities, especially in Canada, I knew that it'd be impossible, but I was relentless. I pursued it anyway. And within the artistic world, there was one field of photography that I knew was possible because it had regular clients, it had seasonality, and that was the fashion world. So fast forward a few years, while I was in business school, I took all the time I could to pursue it. And even while I was in school, I went to New York, met with some agencies. I started the style section of the campus paper, the Western Gazette. Was a photo editor at first, then became a style editor. And I used that as my portfolio and base. And fortunately, I got discovered. And the advice I got while I was in New York was you have to make it abroad. You have to go to Paris, because at that one point in time, there was a certain notion. This is way before social media was as present as it is, and work could not have been shared so easily. Yes, there were things like Flickr, GeoCities, but that was
you just unlocked a memory.
It was really impossible to kind of share your work and get it to the right people. So on my last year of business school, I took an exchange program. I was the last segment of applicants to apply, and I applied to Paris because that was, to me, the epicenter of fashion at the time. And when I made it in Paris, fortunately, again, there was another kind of strike of good luck. As we know, France has a lot of strikes. There was one major strike that occurred as I arrived in Paris, and that actually cut a lot of our studies and school. It was at HEC Paris, and with business school. And I used that time wisely. And in that 1 month and a half when we didn't have school, I managed to meet with agencies. I did a lot of cold calls. I walked up to agencies and I just said, I pleaded, give me a chance. I really, really want to pursue this. Fortunately, one individual saw the potential of my work and gave me my opportunity. All the while, so to answer your question, my parents never knew of any of this. They really thought that I was going to pursue the business world. But the story gets even crazier. So even while I was there and they had no clue I was doing this, my visa was expiring. I was only one semester of business school. I'm like, oh no, I haven't quite made it yet. I don't really have a way to extend my visa. So I asked around. I actually went and did an internship at a fashion house using my business, doing marketing and strategy. And that bought me a few extra months, but I realized, no, this is not going to cut it. So I applied to a master's program in Paris with the same quite prestigious school at HEC Paris, and I extended it by another 2.5 years. I took a sabbatical. Fortunately, in that one time, my parents were still thinking, oh, he's going to become this great businessman. He's going to come back as a banker or some kind of consultant. But little did they realize that I was making all the inroads, and I found the opportunity by the second year of my master's, and eventually I was able to quit. But when I quit the master's, that was when my parents realized something was off. They were like, "Why are you so close to graduation? Why aren't you just not finishing?" And it was that one moment when I had a big client, and I was signed to an agency, which gave me the visa. And that was when I was able to tell my parents, I've made it, I'm succeeding, and this is what I'm going to pursue. They flew to Paris as fast as possible, and they questioned me, they challenged me, but the commitment was already made, and it happened.
Wow. They flew to Paris to interrogate you by the sounds of it.
They were questioning how I was able to pull this off, and how they really had no clue. They thought that photography and all the work I was doing, maybe I was sharing about on Facebook at the time, was just a hobby. It didn't clue in that I was actually pursuing this seriously as a career. And I was, again, through a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifices, and investment, it worked out.
Relentless.
It was relentless, yeah. I think another sad part of the story is that I think part of why I made that choice and I was able to do so is because I also wanted to run away. A lot of my identity issues kind of bubbled to the surface at that point. I realized relatively late in life that I was gay, and it was a challenge for me to reveal it to my parents. And I think that was always brewing the background. And it was only during university when I fully understood that I was. And I think that was a secondary sort of subtext of the story, was that part of my motivation to even go abroad was perhaps to find liberation and find a place where I could be accepted. And the artistic world was very accepting at the time. So I think there were many, many different reasons why I was attracted to that community and why I wanted to pursue the arts.
Did you find that your parents, when you finally had that conversation with them, how was, if I may ask, what was their reception to that? Because you mentioned that they flew to Paris to interrogate you about your school decisions. Your life decision seems like a much bigger consideration. How was that?
It all kind of compounded, and it all just blew up in my face. I knew it was going to happen at some point. Actually, it was okay to a certain degree. My dad, who was a doctor, one of the very first Asian doctors to graduate from U of T, despite all, he was actually one of the pioneers and one of the doctors who chose to work in the inner city, as I discovered many years later, during the 1980s, who dealt with the AIDS epidemic. And so when he dealt with gay people all his life as patients, I think by the time he discovered that I was, and parents all generally know, he was very accepting, and he never challenged me. He gave me the room to come out when I felt that was right. So it wasn't so bad on his side. It was more on my mother's side, who is quite religious, and she had a harder time understanding it. Of course, with the Asian culture, there's a lot of stigma that's also attached to it, especially the family legacy that's associated with it. And one other interesting cultural component is that I am the son of the eldest son. So my dad was the eldest son of his family line, and I'm supposed to carry on the family name. So I had that extra burden and responsibility that I was fully aware of when I was growing up, that I'm supposed to maintain the family name and have offspring. And
do you still carry that burden? It sounds like a burden.
It is a burden, but I think, fortunately, my cousins and myself, we openly had a discussion that we honestly don't care. I think so long we're happy, so long we're able to support each other and live a fulfilled life, that's all that really matters. We don't have that old school hierarchy that was ingrained upon us for so many years.
Amazing.
Are they a lot more supportive now in both aspects?
Unfortunately, my dad passed not too long ago, and actually that's one of the reasons why I moved back. So for those who aren't aware of my story, I lived 10 years in Paris, and of those 10 years, half of those years I was between Paris and New York, and then a few years in LA. So I was really gone for quite a long time, and the impetus to move back to Toronto was actually my dad's diagnosis, terminal cancer. And when I came back, the beauty of it actually is that despite how tragic the situation is, we were able to have more time than expected. He was only given a few weeks, but end up he had more than a year and a half. And that to me was a dream come true, because with that time, we had so much we had the time to unpack it all, and we had time to resolve a lot of our differences. Some differences couldn't be resolved, but we found a mutual understanding, and I think that was both meaningful to myself and my father, but also with my mother, who was able to be present during all that. And I think we are now closer than ever. And again, as tragic as these events may be, I certainly see the light in that. And even my dad on his last days had told me that maybe this was actually the blessing that he'd hoped for, because although his life was cut short, had this incident not occurred, maybe we would have never bonded as well as we did on all the way to his last days. And we really enjoyed each other's company for months. And I don't think we ever had that level of relationship had that not happened.
Wow, that's incredible. So you come back, and then where's photography and film? Where's that part of your life when you're back in Toronto?
So I was very fortunate that I think a lot of the years of experience that I'd accumulated doing commercial photography, commercial film, directing TV commercials, and then all that narrative work in film, actually I was able to bring back to Canada, and I'm bringing back home. I thought it would be very difficult for me to integrate back into Canada. So much of the way we were brought up, and I believe this is incorrect, but I can understand why, is that a lot of people here, a lot of artists here feel that to succeed, you have to leave and go to the States or go to a bigger market. Now, I am a product of that. I do agree, and I do recognize my place of privilege that I did and managed to achieve that. But that's not to say that there's not so much more to contribute coming to Canada. And I was so motivated when the moment I landed, brands had reached out to me, publications had reached out to me, all inquiring to see whether I would be willing to work for them on a much reduced in terms of my rates, because simply the way that our work is and how it's valued is down to the size of the market, right? Mm-hmm. So, but the fact that I was greeted with open arms by so many different people was very rewarding and very heartfelt. So when I began really quickly after my dad passed and started to kind of begin work again, I was so motivated and so encouraged by the simple idea that I'm now able to take all those years of experience to help elevate a lot of the local talents, a lot of the local artists and brands and creators, and hopefully bring that into the international stage. And I think that's become my next chapter in life, is to be able to do that. And that's that's the commercial side of things. On the film and TV side, maybe it was thanks to my dad that maybe give it a little nudge after he passed, but I was really unfortunate that he was unable to see me actually break into film and TV. But soon after he passed, when the pandemic was starting to pick up in 2020, I got the call to make my directorial debut on television on Kim's Convenience, which was a show that my mother and myself and my father, we watched together. It was a bonding moment, especially in those years, especially during the time when I came back to Canada and we had that period of time to rebuild and foster our relationship. And it was a dream come true. It was a show I really wanted to be part of. It was a pioneer at the time, and I think it really is a testament to the leadership of the CBC, who was able to grant the funding for a show like that to be made on a national level. And that really kicked off my career. I got very, very pleased to be nominated by the Directors Guild.
I was going to ask for that episode.
For my episode, for my first episode, which is...
It's incredible.
And according to the CBC, they must have fact-checked this, I am the youngest director the Kim's Convenience ever had. So that was like
Congratulations.
Another beautiful moment when I realized not only was this a proud show talking about Canadians, it's set in Toronto, about a real place and this beautiful family, but I was able to contribute to it, and that again really propelled my career forward and reminds me of why I'm so proud to be Canadian and why I've committed to remain here. So even if work were to take me down the road months and years from now, Toronto will always be home, and I'm settled here.
It's incredible. It's incredible to hear how your passions and the stories you want to tell have so perfectly aligned with your career goals. There's not a lot of people that have that ability to say that, and it seems like it's just one step after the other. You're being put in a position where you can both succeed with your career, but at the same time, you're touching on the very subjects that matter to you. Now, there was a time where you and I saw each other at an event, and we were talking about some of the work that you've been doing with the UN. Do you want to share a little bit about that? Because I think that was incredible stuff.
Sure. I think it all kind of was founded on how my father and my mother had raised me. Again, they were of a Christian. Was a Christian household. My dad did a lot of humanitarian work, as I told you about how he made an active choice to work in the inner city when he built his practice, and he could have left and done a cushy job being a family physician somewhere else. But he, even though I was raised in Scarborough, he actually came all the way down and worked around Moss Park. And that was a conscious decision, and he felt that Canada had given him so much the opportunity that it was his responsibility to find his way to help out new immigrants and marginalized individuals to have a healthy life. Now, that's on my dad's side. Actually, not only that, he was also one of the founding members of a company called the Living Water Counseling Center, and it was a not-for-profit company or organization that's sole purpose was to help integrate new immigrants into society. And when I saw him do that, he was also the choir conductor of a local church, and I saw my mother volunteer on a regular basis. All those, that repetition of and fulfillment that I saw my parents get for giving back kind of informed me, and it really made me believe the same thing. So years later, now that I came back to Toronto, and actually even during my entire career, I've always had this element of myself to use the talents that I have to give back. And be it photography and business and film, I was able to use my skills, and I've always been an advocate. I really believe in the institution of the UN. I know that it has its reputation and heavy bureaucracy, but I do feel that it is the international symbol for peace and stability for the planet. Now, whether it succeeds or not, we need an institution like that to at least communicate. And I really feel that for any problem to be solved, the first step is to open a dialogue, be able to present an issue, communicate the issue, have a dialogue, and hopefully find a solution together. Now, that's always the first step. So I had collaborated with a friend of mine, a colleague. His name is Todd Krim, who was a lawyer and eventually moved into charity work. We just sat down over a coffee. It was actually really just one coffee in the rooftop in LA, and we just brainstormed ideas of how we could use his skills, his networking, his network, and combine it with my talents and ideation and execution to come up with a meaningful project where we can actually do good. And this is completely pro bono, of course. And that was this idea of supporting the UN on the year that it had its first climate summit. This is in 2019. And the ambition was to shed light and find and offer real world solutions to the average person to find simple ways that we can all curb climate change. And I'm not talking about like radical things like never flying ever again or never driving a car, but simple acts that we can all do. And when I presented this idea of, using the voice of many talents, many influential talents around the world, to have them speak up on these things, people that are privileged, I think was a really powerful tool. And I'm proud to say that we broke the record at the UN for the most engaged campaign the UN Environment Program has ever had in its history. And not only that, we won a U.S. Power of Purpose Award for that. And it only showed and only reminded me of how important how important it is for me to continue doing that work. So I don't do it for the awards. I really do it just to kind of give back. But that validation was reminding me of how much I still need to continue doing that work and how meaningful it really is. And we had the world's best talent participate. And actually, that to me was actually, I think, one of the most surprising aspects was when we started working with, talents like Rainn Wilson from The Office. That one beautiful moment led to another. He told his friend and colleague, Susan Sarandon, to come by, and she did, along with Sam Neill, and then it really bubbled. And so from that, we got Joaquin Phoenix.
Nice.
We flew to New York during the Climate Summit, and we brought it to the UN. And the whole idea was to create this portrait series to demonstrate that the world is in our hands, that all of us have our part to play in curbing climate change. So that was one example of the many philanthropic work that I like to continue to do and still do.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Is there a big lesson or a takeaway from all of this that you've sort of left with and you hold on to?
That life is very precious, and unfortunately, none of us are born equal. I think that's the stark realization of the opportunities I've had working abroad in so many different countries and cities, from lesser developed nations to first world countries, that people are raised and brought up in various circumstances that are beyond their control. Some are born in rural communities that still deal with starvation. Others have lack of education, lack of access to education or medical care. And it's unfair to judge people based upon on their background. And I think the biggest lesson for me is to always, every time I meet someone, try to learn their story, understand their point of view, and not just judge them immediately. And I think when we can do that, we can not only bridge and create a stronger bond amongst ourselves as humans, but also find solutions to some of the common problems that we face. And I think, unfortunately, social media often has a shiny veneer that everyone lives a perfect life. And I think during COVID, we've now kind of cracked that open a bit. We realize that mental health is a very, very big issue, and to just not judge people based upon what they see on social media as their life. So I think the biggest lesson that I took away was simply to never judge people based upon what you see and how they act, but by the story they share. And in doing so, I think it will lead to a much more empathetic, sympathetic, and wholesome world.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah, man.
Mm.
Absolutely.
So you've done all this. You're an award-winning director. You're a fantastic photographer. It seems like every time I hear something about Justin Wu, you're at some conference, you're accepting some award and everything. All this is validation, but a part of you, I presume, and correct me if I'm wrong, still has to keep yourself grounded, because the work you do, it's almost like, from a lot of the artists and creators I've talked to, they almost have to shield themselves from the outside noise. How do you do that?
I try not to, actually. I think a big healthy part of knowing your place in society is to be able to listen constantly. Listen to your friends, listen to your family, speak to people who talk to you. And I find that a lot of these conferences I go to, some are very glamorous and, have all the whole red carpet business, but others are very grounded and speak to local communities. And I think I still do that myself. I do a lot of these local meetups, local mentorship, And to me, it's really important to speak to people eye to eye from all facets of the world, anywhere around the world, across all ages and demographics, so that I'm able to fully engage and understand where everyone's coming from. And I think that's part of the reminder of this whole lesson, is this whole journey I've had so far, is to have an open ear, listen, and engage with everyone that you can all around, because there are so many valuable stories to absorb and so many different lessons to take in. And I think the world is such a beautiful place where we have all unique stories, and yet at the same time, so many universal struggles. So,
what would you consider a universal struggle?
I mean, there are so many, but one that I can sort of speak to, I think we can all relate to during the pandemic, is feeling of loneliness, feeling of disconnection, isolation, and perhaps even the grief. Many people may have lost an individual or known someone who's lost an individual during COVID, and or simply mental health. I think recognizing our place in society. I wouldn't say we've never. I think my generation, at least, I don't think we've felt and experienced anything like that since 9/11. And for us, where we all had to pause, take a moment to really think about our place in society, and question what really makes us happy. I think that was the one, I believe, necessary. I mean, I'm really unfortunate, of course. It's not, I would never wish this upon the world, but if we were to take one thing away, is that it was one moment in time where we had the one opportunity to look at ourselves and determine, where do we want to be in society? What really matters after all? And yeah, I think that's sort of my takeaway. And again, these are just very, very few isolated feelings that we all share universally.
Well, it's really forced the conversation around mental health and loneliness. We were talking about how mental health has taken center stage to a lot of things, and it's really forced men in particular to start having those conversations and really pull back that curtain and accept, firstly, that men suffer from mental health. And for a long time, whether it was because of cultural stigmas or just societal stigmas, where men typically just never wanted to talk about it, and now more and more men are opening up. Like you were telling me about how, was it your friend or your coworker who just came up to you and just started, telling you that this is what I'm going through, this is who I am, and there's more and more of men that are starting to have those conversations, which is super encouraging. So that is definitely a universal struggle.
Yeah, definitely. It's harder for us all. I think the same thing you're saying with COVID, it's really allowed people to look into themselves, right? Really see, okay, where do I stand? Because especially when there's nothing, all the distractions were gone, right? So it's really, okay, like I'm here, and you really get to look at who you are and what you've contributed and how you feel you are in a place in your life. And I feel like not after, because I guess COVID's still going, that a lot of people shifted, right? And shifted into a more happiness focus, opposed to, financial focus or anything. It's okay, I got to do whatever I can to be happy, because when I was left alone in this space in COVID, I was losing my mind. Now that I'm allowed to go outside, okay, I need to just focus on anything that's going to be happy, whether it be with people or changing your jobs or changing your relationship or fixing it or working on it or leaving it or staying. That it's really helped us all focus. So that is definitely a universal struggle for sure.
The work that you're doing now, how much of your personal, what's the word I'm looking for here? So your preference, not really the right word, but your inclination to include or to cover works or things that on subjects that matter to you, how much of that determines what work you decide to do and not do?
A lot of it does. I think I have to admit, I think the success that I've had thus far, again, is a privilege that I can now pick and choose the projects I want to work on. And for instance, even during the pandemic, I supported local brands, local companies, Indigenous companies who all suffered in various different ways, but I chose and made the active choice to support ones I firmly believed in based upon interviewing them and looking at their ethos. And moving forward, I think it's something that's really important to me, especially in the artistic world, is that besides some of the vapid nature that you find on social media, within film and television, there needs to be a certain sense of purity to the message that you deliver, and a certain authenticity. One kind of interesting anecdote, I think, whenever I share this with my colleagues and friends and family who just don't know what a director actually does, is that part of directing is to be able to empathize, sympathize, and understand the motivation behind all the characters and what they're dealing with, right? In every scene, whether it's comedy or drama, horror or action, everyone's dealing with some kind of struggle. Oftentimes, that's the case, right? And there's always a conflict that's going on, whether it's an internal conflict or a conflict with someone else. That's what makes it kind of interesting. That's also entertaining to watch. But at the root of it, it has to be authentic. And if there's a script that comes in that I cannot relate to whatsoever, or can't find the humanity of myself in it, I know I would be a very poor director because I would not know how to direct that. And I think part of, again, being in this position now is that I get to really pick and choose what's meaningful to me, and also be cognizant of whether I personally even add value with my background and my voice. Now, fortunately, I think I keep a very open mind, and one of my favorite directors actually still to this day inspires me, and it's because of his mentality. The Taiwanese director Ang Lee, Oscar-winning director, and
Great director.
Great director. I think for those who don't know, he directed movies like Life of Pi, Pride and Prejudice, and here's one that completely shocks me all the time: is that he also did not only Kochi Tiger Hidden Dragon, which is very cultural, but he did Brokeback Mountain, and
really?
that to me is a shock to. And for those that are not in film and don't know his story, it's because and you can see this in many interviews, I don't know what he said verbatim, but he would always repeat the notion that in his career, if he's not challenged, if he doesn't feel fear, then he feels like he's stagnating as an artist. And when I saw that film, and I was so moved by it because I could relate to some of those themes, even for people that are not homosexual or don't have those tendencies, you can still watch it and still feel those emotions because you just know the universal feeling of love. So that's kind of brings back to an earlier part of our conversation, is that although the situation is unique to them and not everyone will be able to relate to that specific feeling, but everyone knows the kind of unrequited love, right? And he was able to capture that so authentically. And I think what he did was he fully immersed himself into that culture. And although he himself is not gay, and how would he know what it's like to be in that time period with gay cowboys, right? Like how would he have any notion of that? But he put himself in that world, found the humanity, and was able to express it so authentically that it created a beautiful piece of art that to this day I think still holds and still helps a lot of people who have identity issues. And it doesn't really matter what culture you're from. I think to be able to watch that film and see that I know what that's like, and see the tragedy that kind of unfolded is super powerful. So to your question again, is I now am motivated by the mission that he had set out for himself, to feel fear, to challenge himself, and to take risks and learn. I think that's part of why he's such a great director for me, and why he's a legend, is that he does take bold risks. He invests his time to learn and be a student of humanity, and that's certainly one of the aspects of my parents that taught me. And my dad was very curious, my mom was very curious, and I think that curiosity has bled into a lot of my work and my personal ethos. So,
and what is that personal ethos, if you had to put it into a sentence or a statement?
Is that the world is a very complex and ever-changing world, and to know it fully is to just keep studying, be open-minded, learn about different cultures, and constantly read and research, because I think at the end of the day, it makes me a stronger artist to be able to connect with as many people as possible. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for these stories, not only in terms of a career sense of trying to find the story I want to direct and share to the world, but to just gain a greater appreciation for how beautiful this world really is.
Wow. That's a great ethos.
Yeah.
I could live by that. I think it keeps you humble. I think it keeps you a student of humanity. I like that thought process, because I think it helps you empathize with people that you may not necessarily agree with on a variety of topics, but it wouldn't matter because you can empathize by the fact that they're a human being with thoughts and feelings and a bad day and a good day and a family and a partner and all of these things that are mixed into this pot of what's standing in front of you, and you're just trying to have a conversation. And I think it breeds an open dialogue, which breaks down a ton of barriers. And I think during COVID, there was a lot of isolation, 100%. And then there was a lot of people being divided into various spectrums for whatever reasons. But I think coming out of it now, I think people are relearning how to have conversations with each other and relearning how to speak to each other. And film, photography, the arts in general has been such a powerful medium in expressing all of that post-pandemic. During, for sure, but post especially, it's re-engaging people's ability to converse with one another. It's incredible to watch. So kudos to you and the entire industry for doing the work that you guys do. It's incredible.
It's well, thank you for that. But I just think it's fun to do, but again, incredibly moving and meaningful. And I think that's where so many people often ask me, how does this compare to a lot of other colleagues that you grew up with? And now that I was able to kind of return home and reconnect with a lot of my high school friends who all have, let's say, a more classic path, I think we all have our place in society. And I'm just so thankful, so grateful that the industry, the community has allowed me to continue to do the work that I do, and survive as a result doing this. And I think it's a really an opportunity and a privilege. I think I know many artists, especially students I teach from local colleges and universities, who all want to pursue the same thing. It's not the easiest job. It's not a job that often gets a lot of thanks, unfortunately. It's also a job that many people think is very fickle. It's just, oh, you're having fun, you're doing a glamorous photo shoot. Oh, what an amazing life you have. Like, are you even working? And yeah, so there's a lot of fun. I'm really appreciating the opportunity that comes with it.
But there's a lot of work.
But there's a lot of work, and to do it well. I think to do it well, you do have to put a lot of investment into it, and I'm proud of the work that I've been able to do, and I look forward to all the new stories I can.
Any new stories you can share?
Sure. I will make an announcement here. I'll see how much I can share. Let me think.
We got an exclusive, everyone.
I will be directing my first feature film this spring.
Nice.
Wow! Congratulations.
Man.
It's a studio feature film
Here?
and
In Toronto?
no, it's going to be in Vancouver.
Okay.
I'm trying to be very careful with
What you give away. Yeah.
But what I can tell you is that it's taking me some time to find the right story. This is not a story that I wrote. I've been pitched stories before by the studios, and I receive scripts pretty regularly. And this is one that I immediately fixated on. It was a page turner, and I was just moved. It's a very universal story. Unfortunately, I can't share too much of it, but it does follow a very successful book that has been read by many, many millions of people. And I think that there's a universal truth to it that I can certainly relate to. There are certain personal experiences that I've had in the past, and although I can say that it's about the next generation, I think that speaks to, again, both the unique stories of today and different cultures and backgrounds, but also some of the universal themes that we all deal with. So I'm very excited for that. That should begin production sometime around March, and hopefully it'll be out maybe in theaters. Should be in theaters by next winter.
Wow.
Nice.
Well, if you're ever looking for extras, Matthew and I will happily fly out to Vancouver or BC.
Happily.
It's gonna be a great film. I'm very excited. I'm very
It
excited.
should be. That's incredible.
Good, that's good. That's amazing.
I jumped for joy when actually I was actually walking around. Funny enough, I was just outside of Startwell when I received the news.
Oh, really?
Nice. You just got it.
I was finishing a project. I was walking on the street, heading home, and I got the call, just out of the blue. I got the call from the studio to say that if you're interested, we'd like to offer you the position of director for this feature film.
Wow, that's
and
incredible.
it was a beautiful, moving day. I had to pinch myself, and I didn't quite believe it until it took me until the day after when I actually received the formal email. Like, oh, this is real. All right.
How'd you celebrate?
Good question.
I celebrated by just sharing with friends and family who really know my journey. I think several really close friends of mine have really seen how long it's taken for me to be here.
Did you give out like out loud scream?
Oh, there was a loud scream. There was a loud scream, a lot of tears, but
good.
And I'm pretty sure people thought I was like,
probably because on the streets.
completely mad.
That's the best.
Oh yeah,
that's the best.
But I think people also saw what happened. I mean, they could probably guessed. It's
They
like
knew something. The news was great
they
news.
knew it was
yeah.
great news, right? And some people steer clear, of course. But no, I really made the phone call to my mom. That was the very first phone call, and she was so proud, and she is so proud. And hopefully, if there's a possibility, I'd love to bring her on set. And actually, I'm also very. This is a very personal anecdote. I get emotional just thinking about it, but it happened very recently. I directed a new series for BBC, and for the first time in my mother's entire life, she was able to visit me on set, and on a TV set, and so much I think of my life, of my work, is shrouded in mystery. I think even to the average person, they really don't know what it's actually like on set. And the showrunner, the producers I had to say thanks to them really for when I just asked them very kindly. I was like, I know this is my last day on set, and I think we're nearly wrapping up the episode, and would it be possible? And I was so moved that they said yes. They gave my mom the VIP treatment. They gave her a parking spot. They escorted her
the parking spot
with the director's chair right next to mine.
Nice.
And yeah, it was a really full circle moment. And again, of course, it's unfortunate that my dad was unable to be there, but I know that I'm confident that he was shining from above and watching all this unfold. And so, yeah, I'm very excited for that. And in another radical pivot, I can't announce the full details, but I'm excited to also share that I will be the creative director for a very big company in Canada, and my motivation there is to help build community, and I really want to use again a lot of the skills that I have to shepherd a new era for this company and to touch as many voices and people as possible. So again, the details will come up very, very soon, but all to say, this is more and more mounting evidence that I'm not leaving Canada, and even if I do, this is home, and I'm for Canada first. I'm really here to present as many different opportunities and also create opportunities for local Canadians. And now that I'm in a position of power and privilege, I'm going to use that power for good, and I'm going to shape our country and culture the way the way and the best that I can. And that to me is just to provide opportunities for individuals who just simply never had a possibility. Like seeing myself, if I could, I would love to, I'm even to this day, seek out people who are passionate, who simply are at disadvantage, maybe because of a physical disability, or it could be mental disability or financial disadvantage. Again, I don't judge people based upon their background, but we're not born equal. And so if I have the possibility of giving a chance to these individuals to contribute meaningfully and still be based on merit of good work, and that's what I really want to do. And that's this is the new chapter of my life, which is to give back and again, really make us all rise.
It's beautiful.
I know you're saying how, I guess back in your day, how you'd have to leave Canada, and obviously you're doing opening a lot of doors, so you want to make it so people don't have to. But do you still think you have to leave Canada, or is it still like to make it?
Fundamentally, I don't think we actually have to, because if there's one thing I've learned during the pandemic is that, we've all done it, especially in all the days in lockdown. We were scrolling on Instagram or going on Facebook or even TikTok, which of course blew up during the pandemic, is that we are now more connected than ever. Although, yes, we all faced isolation and loneliness, and, the lack of human contact. I was so motivated to see all these fun events being shared all around the world. You can see videos from China. I can see videos from Africa. I can see people sharing their day-to-day life from all aspects, all around the world, across all different ages. And I think that was such a beautiful moment for me to realize that the world has become so much smaller. And to your question is that because the world has become so much smaller through the use of these apps, I think that artists, again, it really depends on the job, but artists no longer need necessarily to leave the country to be able to succeed, because their work can be announced to the world, and so long you can find an audience as an artist, that's all you really need. Now, that said, being mindful of context, there are also examples where you do need to go. So for instance, if you are a musician, and certainly Spotify and Apple Music and all these different streaming platforms can push your work out there to the world, and you can still succeed and monetize. If you ever do want to perform to the biggest audience you can, you have to go to the biggest market. And that may mean going to Europe, or going to the States, going to Asia, or wherever. So I think the reality is that to be discovered, to succeed, you no longer necessarily need to live outside and go to the big cities. I think we are a big city, and I am more motivated than ever to help Toronto, help Ontario, help Canada become this new center for creativity, this new focal point that can stand alongside a lot of our American counterparts, the Chicagos, the New Yorks, the LAs, the Paris and Londons. I think Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, we can stand proud and create our own identity that can be standing proud alongside them, not smaller than they are.
I love that. Toronto proud.
Toronto proud. No, it's people like, it takes a lot of momentum. And I think, as we all know, as Canadians, Drake really put Toronto on the map. And that is just an example of how we need to do it. We cannot rely solely on one individual. It really requires repetition. It really requires people to also desire it. And I think that's what I've been trying to inspire the next generation, is to stop this mentality that we need to bleed our talent to the States or bleed our talent to Europe, when we can foster and create a community where we can stand on our own 2 feet and create value and be able to contribute to the global landscape as well as to Canada. And I think that really starts with people believing that Canada has a lot to offer, and believing that amongst ourselves, we have so much to offer. So it's going to take a lot. It's going to take us some time. And certainly it's going to be decades of work, I think. But thanks to people like yourselves who are spotlighting people like me who have, lived that life and that experience, I'm happily able to share that. I think moving forward, we can all together continue to foster a better community.
I love that. Mr. Wu, it's almost been an hour.
Has
It flies. Yeah.
That's good.
This was incredible. Thank you for sharing your journey.
No, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. It's an honor, and any opportunity for us to, share our truths in a public forum, I relish it. I'm humbled by it, and I think I really admire the work that you do, and I wish you all the best. And
Thank you.
and to all the audience members out there, thank you for listening. It's been a privilege.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming by. We're excited to watch this journey that you're on. It's an incredible journey, and what makes it all the more special is that you're a gem of a human. So it's great to watch it, and we're here to support you every way we can.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.